Well, Game 2 of a 3-game homestand for the Indiana Fever was held Tuesday night against the Dallas Wings, and they came up 1 point short. I'm Scott Agness of Fieldhouse Files.com. It was an 81-80 loss for the Fever, but they were fortunate to even be back in the game in the first place. After a putrid third quarter, outscored 25-13, didn't put together a great performance as a whole anyway, and yet they were still there late. 18 turnovers in this one. That one led to 27 points off turnovers for the Wings, and they only had 15 assists. So the offense wasn't humming. Obviously, they were lacking their three-point guards and such, but it was a game where their defense struggled, and that also led to offensive woes as well. A little disjointed, lacked flow throughout much of the game, and it didn't help early on the fact that Lexi Hall, one of the glue to this Fever roster, picked up a couple quick fouls 3 minutes into the game and checked out. And then the Fever also committed 6 turnovers in the first quarter alone. That was even more than they had field goals there to make for a very rough start for Indiana.
I didn't think our attention to detail on defense was very good. They got loose for some easy ones. We started fouling, getting to the free throw line, and turning the ball over. I mean, there were moments where, there's no transition defense for turnovers for scores. And, we had multiple in a row. I mean, 27 points off of turnovers. And, I felt like our group did some uncharacteristic things. Well, all of our point guards are injured. I think that's the first thing. And again, it's one of those things. Dallas turned up the pressure. I mean, defensively, they made it a little bit more difficult for us to bring down the ball and initiate offense, and became a little bit more disruptive. And we're working Odyssey into what we do, but still, it's tough because point guards are the ones who get you organized. And there were times where we weren't organized. There were times where we were over dribbling, got away from our off-ball actions and went straight to trying to go one-on-one.
They were down by 12 entering the fourth, fell behind even more to 17, but fought all the way back down to within 1. Had a couple looks at it even before that final look. It was Kelsey Mitchell who led the Fever with 24 points. She's the league leader now, by the way, in total points scored. She also leads the league with 19 games with 20 points or more. She missed a tough contested shot right in front of the Indiana Fever bench in the corner in that final second. They at least got a look at it. And the Fever had about 10 seconds left. And in those situations, coaches will tell you, especially given the playing style of the Fever, the Pacers even, for that matter, they want to run it down, and they want to get the defense on their heels and set up something unpredictable rather than calling the timeout in most cases. Remember, if you call a timeout, it also allows for the defense to get set. But Mitchell was dribbling around. They really weren't going anywhere. Therefore, Stephanie White used a timeout. They had 1.7 seconds left. Ball went in to Kelsey Mitchell, and she missed it. A tough-looking shot there in the corner.
It's never fun to lose. I thought we got a pretty good look out of it. But again, I think, we shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. The 17 turnovers got us there.
Mm-hmm. We knew it was going to be a low clock when we got it out, and we had been really good in transition. And we were in the penalty. So I wanted us to outlet and attack in transition. When it got to the point where we didn't attack and we just started dribbling sideways, I probably should have used it at the 3-second mark instead of a little bit later. I thought Kels might have had a baseline drive.
The Fever had 5 players in double figures, but it was their defense that held them back throughout this one, especially in the second half. Point of attack was off. They weren't staying in front of their defenders. Then if they got past them, the Fever fouled. I think there were like 5 straight possessions at one point where they fouled and, right away put the Dallas Wings to the line. That defense was very reminiscent of what we saw in the final couple of games on the road trip out west. In fact, it was something I asked about before the last game against Chicago, the number of ways that they needed to get that corrected. But that issue, it reappeared. It bothered them throughout most of this game, and fouling at the basket, not staying in front of defenders. And part of that's probably communication as well. And really, both sides were very unhappy with officiating all game long. The inconsistencies, talk about the reckless closeout that was called on Sophie Cunningham early in the game. Same call, same position on the floor, in fact, and it was not called one on Grace Berger right there against Kelsey Mitchell there. So that one I didn't quite understand. But nonetheless, after the game, we saw so much physicality during which. So I asked Coach White about that physicality, how disruptful it was throughout the game, lacked the flow, and disrupted the flow, really. And she used that opportunity to defend Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston.
I think just really trying to be able to fight through that, I think is definitely hard sometimes, because I think, you're trying to make sure that you're doing one thing on one side of the ball and then you get on the other end, it's kind of like, okay, well, sure, they can beat us up, that's no problem. But I mean, for us, really, our focus, just making sure, and that's what we talked about in the back, is just make sure that when we come in for our next game, just make sure we're not fazed by that.
It was a physical game, I think there's a double standard in how people get their calls. I think Kelsey Mitchell, number one, is held or chucked on every freaking possession and never gets a call off the ball. I think Aaliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the league. She never gets a call. And there's a double standard there, certainly. But again, if it's going to be physical and you're gonna allow us to be physical, then allow both teams to be physical. If you're going to call the holds and you're going to call the chucks, and you're going to then call it both ways. So I mean, I think that we've been pretty consistent in what we're asking for, and I didn't feel like it was consistent, especially for those two. I think you could call a foul every time down the floor for those two.
Two Wings players finished with season highs, and neither one of them were Paige Beckers, who scored 16 points. And it was cool. She received a loud cheers, both in team introductions and really throughout the game. You can really see her fan base and growing quite a bit, and that certainly helps everyone within the WNBA. But again, Fever fell behind, and they still had a chance late because of that attack they mounted late, got stops. And then with the starters, mind you, I think it was important for Lexi Hall, Sophie Cunningham, ball handlers, hard playing players to get back on the floor. They helped key to run late, but it still wasn't enough.
We did a lot better on the defensive end, getting stops, not allowing them second chance points, and then we found the hot hand, and Bibbs was that hot hand, especially too for a part of that game, getting us that lead back. And so just making sure that we're just getting downhill, getting open sprays, and just attacking.
We got to forcing them into some tough shots, and we defended without fouling, and that allowed us to get out in transition and allowed us to push the ball and get some easy buckets. I thought our ATO execution at times was really good, especially in that fourth quarter. We got some good looks out of it, but more than anything, again, when it starts on the defensive end, it allows us to get out and to run in transition and to play faster, and we're at our best when we do that. And especially, when we're limited with the point guard position, you're not holding on to the ball for a long time. You're passing it ahead, you're attacking, you're going.
This was a disappointing performance by the Fever coming off that win over Chicago, but I think we also have to realize, for one, Chicago's certainly missing several players. They also have not been a good team all season long, and the Fever have dominated. They've had their way in that series. So new opponent, a little bit more physical, a group that is more polished and come together. That challenges the Fever in this one, but still got to be mindful right now, too, of what's happening with Indiana, the inconsistencies from their roster and who's available on a day-to-day basis, and the fact that it's been unstable throughout most of this season, and they've had to, forced to, figure it out quickly, whether it was Ari McDonald early in the season, Chloe Bibby. Well, the latest, Odyssey Sims, the veteran guard, joining the Fever a couple days ago, played 13 minutes in her Fever debut, but you could tell is a little bit disjointed, limited in the plays they could certainly run, something that will get better in time. Now, speaking of Bibby, she led the bench players with 11 points, 3 of 3 from distance, even knocked down another one, I think, with a toe on the line. I give her a lot of credit. I love how she knows exactly her role, and so every time she catches the ball, usually it's high, and she goes right into her shot and knocks it down. She's been a good asset for this Fever team this season. I want to note how Lynn Dunn was celebrated at halftime. I mentioned the other day at practice how they alerted her, surprised her that she was the Inspiring Women Award winner, and that award would be named after her moving forward. Well, she was honored at the game. At halftime, she talked with sideline reporter Kelsey Casper about that. And her message to young girls is go after what you want, chase what you want, you can do it. And so a special night certainly for Lynn Dunn. Now the Fever plan to take Wednesday off, then we'll practice ahead of their home game. Another one right here at the Fieldhouse. That one's against the Washington Mystics coming up on Friday. From Gainbridge Fieldhouse, I'm Scott Agness for FieldhouseFiles.com.